Hey everybody, we are back with Thoughts or Things. We're on Chapter 8. Chapter 8 is called Museum and Menagerie Horrors. And with this chapter, I almost skipped over this chapter. This chapter is super small. It's only one page, but it's very confusing. So I kind of walked away for a few days to kind of see how this really fits in and to see how I could explain it. And because Prentice doesn't explain it very good. When I read through it, you know what I'm talking about. Is that you're kind of trying to figure out what is he talking about here? How does this fit into the whole book? And then I moved on to chapter 9. And let me paraphrase what's really going on and what my meaning and my takeaway is. Then we'll move forward and read this one pager. So in this chapter, Prentice Mulford, he dives into animals, okay? And he really talks deep for one page, and he talks really deep that if you take an animal out of their natural habitat, out of their natural living space, and you put them somewhere where it's not natural to them, or you put them in a zoo, or he calls it a museum, but remember that this is back in the 1850s. But let's say an animal lives in a zoo. Well, you're taking them out of their natural habitat, and anytime an animal lives in a zoo, their lifespan decreases. So they either get unhealthy or they die. So this is why I was a little bit confused. I was like, what is he going with this? And then I moved on to chapter 9. And this is how it fits. Is when we talk about manifesting and we talk about we're trying to get a better life. We're trying to manifest better things. We're trying to have overall success in our lives. And in order to do that, we have to live by the laws of nature and live by the laws of the universe. And when we live against these laws, when we're not in harmony with the laws of nature, we're not in harmony with the laws of the universe, well, what happens? Okay, we have unsuccess. We don't have success. We don't have abundance. When you live against the laws, when you live against the laws of nature, it's going to give you bad things. You're going to have a life that's you're not in control of. You're going to have a life that you don't want. Things are going to start happening in your life that you don't want. And this is the result of living not in harmony with the laws of nature and with the laws of the universe. So this is what I think Prentice Mulford is really meaning here, is when you look at the animal kingdom and you combine the animal kingdom with the laws of nature, if you remove an animal out of their natural habitat and put them in a zoo, while you're taking them out of their natural habitat, the animal now is living in harmony, and it decreases that animal's life. So the same thing basically happens to us as a metaphor when we're not living in harmony with the laws of the universe, we're not living in harmony with the laws of nature. Well, we're going to really have trouble manifesting. We're really going to have trouble living in abundance, because we're not in harmony with what we want. We're not in harmony with the laws of nature. So with that being said, let's move on to chapter 8, Museum and Menagerie Horrors. A menagerie of beasts and birds means a collection of captured walking and flying creatures, taken from their natural modes of life, deprived permanently of such modes, and suffering more or less in consequence. The bird, used to be freedom of the forest and air, is imprisoned in the most limited quarters. Its plumage there is never as fresh and glossy as in its natural state. It does not live as long. The captive life of many species brought from the tropics is very short, especially of the smaller and more delicate species. So right there, he takes it is when you're taking an animal out of its natural habitat, okay, it doesn't live as long. It doesn't live abundance. Okay, and the metaphor is, you have to kind of put it in this metaphor, is when we ourselves, humans, when we're out of our natural habitat. What's our natural habitat? Well, our natural habitat is going to be the laws of nature, the laws of the universe. If we're not following the laws of nature, if we're living in harmony with the laws of nature, well, it's going to be hard for us to manifest. It's going to be hard for us to get success. It's going to be hard for us to get abundance. Same way with the animal species. When they're not living in harmony with their natural state, with their natural upbringing, well, there's consequences. Bears, lions, tigers, deer, wolves, and all the other animals like liberty and freedom of the range as well as man. See, now he's connecting. He just isn't explaining it very well. Okay, when animals live and not in harmony with the earth. They're kind of taken out of their habitat. It's like our liberty and our freedom is taken away, as when he's comparing it to us. You're not living in harmony. In the Menagerie, they are deprived of it. The air they breathe is often fetid and impure. To the burrowing animal, earth is as much a necessity and a comfort as a comfortable bed is to us. The captured burrow is often kept on a hard board floor, which, in its restless misery to get into its native earth, it scratches and it wears away in cavities inches in its depth. Monkeys by the thousand die prematurely of consumption because forced to live in a climate too cold and damp for them, and no amount of artificial heat can supply the element in which they have been accustomed in the air of their native tropic groves and jungles. Seals are kept in tanks of fresh water when salt water is their natural element. Their captive lives are always short. There is no form of organized life, but is a part of belonging of the locality and latitude where its wild state it is born. The polar bear is a natural belonging of the Arctic regions. The monkey is a belonging and outgrowth of the tropical conditions. When either of these is taken from their climes native to them, and out of which they do not voluntarily wander, pain is inflicted on them. Isn't that interesting? And I know this is written back in the 1850s, and you might say, well, Chad, today's 2024, this doesn't go on more as of today, but it does. No matter how well we're treating these animals, what his point is, we're taking the animal out of their natural habitat where they live wild and free. They have freedom. Okay? And when you take something out, they start living in harmony to the way they should live. And when you live in harmony, you're not in harmony with the laws, okay, you suffer consequences. And this is going to be, he's going to flip it in chapter 9, how this kind of relates to us. But you kind of have to think in a way of when you're manifesting. When you have trouble manifesting, it's because you're not living in harmony with the laws of the universe. You're not living in harmony with the law of nature. So if you're not living in harmony, well then there's consequences to that. Remember, with universal law, there's always an opposite. There's always a polar opposite. If there's an up, there has to be a down. There's a hot, has to be a cold. If there's a positive, has to be a negative. There's a good, has to be a bad. So when we're not living in harmony, the harmony would be living in good, pull out good in every situation. When you're not living in harmony, you're focused on the bad. So that we're always attracting, but at what degree are we attracting? Go to the cheap museum, now so plentiful, and regard the bed-wrangled plumage and their apparent sickly condition of many of the birds, natives of the distant climes, imprisoned there. You see them but for an hour. Return in a few months and you will not find them. What has become of them? They have died, and their places are supplied by others likewise slowly dying. The procession of captives, so to suffer and die prematurely, never ceases moving into these places. Ships are constantly bringing them hither. An army of men distributed all over the world and ranging through the forests of every clime is constantly engaged in trapping them. For what reasons are all these concentrations of captured misery now to be found in every large town and city of our country? Simply to gratify human curiosity. Simply that we may stand a few minutes and gaze at them behind their bars. What do we then learn of their real natures and habits in these prisons? What would be learned of your real tastes, inclinations, and habits were you kept constantly in a cage? Is gratification of this curiosity worth the misery it costs? If a bird wooed by their kindness comes and builds its nest in a tree near your window, and there rear its brood, it's not the sight it affords from day to day worth 100 times more than that of the same bird, deprived of its mate and shut up in a cage. Will you not, is in its freedom, you study its real habits and see its real and natural life? Feel more and more drawn to it by the tie of the common sympathy? As you see evidence in that life, so much that belongs to your own, Like you, it builds a home. Like you, it has affection and care for its mate. Like you, it provides for its family. Like you, it is alarmed at the approach of danger. Like you, it nestles in thought of security. Yet, so crude and cruel still is the instinct in our race that the ruin of the wild bird's home, or its slaughter or capture, is a ruling desire with 19 boys out of 20 as they roam the woods, and cultured parents will see their children leave the house equipped with the means for this destruction without even the thought of protest. Now that's the end of the chapter. This chapter was really small. It was only one page. So if you kept with me this long, you can kind of really see this is a very tricky chapter. You know, if I didn't explain it in the very beginning and kind of give my own interpretation of it, you know, it would be kind of hard. I mean, you would kind of read it and kind of walk away and kind of think like, well, what's Prentice Mulford? What is he really getting at here? And, you know, just to sum it up, like I said in the beginning of this video, is that he's really, when we're all the way through the whole book, he's really digging deep into the laws of the universe, the laws of nature, manifesting, law of attraction, law of assumption. No matter how you want to, no matter what you want to say, no matter what term you want to pigeonhole in there, it's how to have a better life. Okay? And in this book's Thoughts Are Things, he's really focused on thoughts, and he's going super, super deep on thoughts, crazy deep on thoughts. So now in chapter 9, he's going to do a switch here in chapter 9, but in this chapter, it's kind of like right in the middle of the book. And, you know, he's explaining how when you take an animal that lives in the laws of nature, that grows up, that is born in the right habitat, is born in the right country, that is born in the right climate for them to withstand, is taken out of that habitat while they're living in inharmony now. Okay, and since they're living in harmony, that shortens their lifespan. Okay, even today in 2024, when you take an animal out of their natural habitat, let's say the tropics in Asia, and you bring them to the United States, a lot of times their lifespan is shortened because the mineral content is in the food. In the United States, we don't have the mineral content in the food to feed them. They're not getting enough minerals, so that shortens their life. You know, there's way more minerals in the tropics or in Asia where they actually live and were born and grow up, because the grasses and the leaves have way more higher and richer mineral content. So when you take something out of their natural habitat, you know, consequences happen. And when we go into chapter 9, you're going to see how it's kind of linked, where when we ourselves as humans, when we live not in harmony with the laws of nature, we have consequences as well. And our consequences is, you know, we manifest things we don't like. Things come into our life that we don't like. And we wonder why it's happening, because we're not living in harmony with the laws of nature or the laws of the universe. But other than that, my friends, that's the end of chapter 8. And I'll see you in chapter 9.